Waiting on YouTube. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm back again. I know it's been a hot minute, but like I said, I was going to be back I was going to take off April back. Wait, May. Oh my goodness. Yes. Been gone so long, I don't remember time anymore. Anyway, yeah, I am really excited to be back. Now, I know that I said that I was going to be rereading an old story, but there's just times when I go through a bunch of files and then I just come across this one story. So, as a result, I'm picking a new story tonight. Wait, I guess I should back up, introduce myself. Hi, I'm Beth Wagner, and I am currently reading all of my dad's manuscripts. There's a bunch of them, a whole bunch of them. And what I'm doing is I am reading them in order to mark them up for editing so that I can publish them. I'm gotten I've got approximately 10 so far. So yeah, and more to come. And also spin-offs that I'll be writing myself. Um, those ones will be going off to other editors to review, but so and I still got a little ways on that. However, once I get to a point with that, then I probably will also read my own stuff as well. But we're not there right now, and whole bunch of I still have a whole bunch more to go through before I even get to that point. um, so thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate that. Uh, Hold on. Oh, well, that's really great. Thank you for that. Um, really appreciate that. That was super nice of you and really sweet. Um, really appreciate it. That was me on Twitch to sort of give me give me some news. Not always able to like respond right away, so I do apologize. I will try to like talk to people as I go, but when I start reading, I may not be able to like respond right away. But they're popping up now on the screen, so which makes it easier for me to respond. But I'll be like verbally responding instead of just you know randomly. And that's for Twitch. For YouTube, you guys, I have you. You have to be subscribed to the channel, but that's also because I don't want random people just coming in and saying all kinds of cool stuff like what happened to me on a Periscope. Another networking thing a long time ago. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to yeah, well, thank you for that. Really, yay. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. That kind of makes my day. So what the name of the story that I'm reading, and I'll be reading for the month of June, is called um, "The Dance of." Oh my goodness, I wrote it down wrong in the chat. Okay, this is good. Getting back, getting my legs again. I thought it said 20,000, but I was wrong. It says 100,000. Wait, maybe I'm wrong. Nope, 100,000. Definitely 100,000 steps. So the name of the story is "The Dance of 100,000 Steps," which sounds okay, whatever. But here, this is what got me because I read the synopsis, which I do now. If there is a synopsis. Oh, okay, okay. You eat dinner, and yeah, you can always catch the rebroadcast, so that's fine too. Thanks for popping in. Anyway, so A Dance of 100,000 Steps. Here's the synopsis. Okay. This is the story of Jerry Wesson, a spy assassin on the run in a world where magic combines with gunpowder age technology, who lifts himself from a common man in an aristocratic environment to a successful businessman. So it was really more the like just the first sentence, well, the first part of the sentence, because this is a run-on sentence as he is wont to do. But yeah, spy assassin on the run in a world where magic combines with gunpowder age technology. Done. I'm here for it because on top of it all, if you're to go on to well, basically any retailer, online retailer that sells books, and you look up JP Wagner. Thanks, you too. um, you look up JP Wagner, then you'll see there's like this one book called Railroad Rising, and while that one came out in 2015, um, this was written 8 years before that came out, and probably before it even was an idea. So I'm looking at this, and I'm now curious, and you get to find out along with me whether or not this is connected, like even tenuously connected to Railroad Rising. Because if it is, this will be so cool. So yeah, if you like, I won't say steampunk because it's not quite steampunk. It's more like flintlock fantasy because it's going to have a lot of fantasy elements in it. Maybe we'll find out. Let's read it together. Okay. Without further ado, dun, 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 I bring you chapter 1. The clatter of boots on the stairway woke me, and the first smash of musket butt on the floor snapped me alert. I swung my feet off the bed and into my boots. Yes, I keep them handy for just such eventualities. I scooped my wallet out from under the pillow, took a small sphere from it, laid that on the bed, and tucked the rest inside the waistband of my pants. The door was cracking now, but I'd allowed for just that sort of thing. It moved quick, but I knew each movement, and there was no fumbling. I flung the stool through the leaded window, sending it with all my strength. There was shouting out there, but of course, I knew that only a bunch of fools would come at my door without someone watching the window. It seemed I'd been betrayed, but that was something to be thought about later. I flung the pillow out the same window, and there was a bang of blaze and musketry. Feathers flew. Someone out there must have more luck than they deserved in this light. I took up the sphere, spoke the arming word, and tossed it into the middle of the floor. Then I took up my sword, still scabbarded, and smashed some of the glass in the remaining sill. I heard the door go down behind me. Then my boots were crunching on glass, and I launched myself into the night. As I hit the cottage roof next door, one of the reasons I chose that particular room, there was a bang and a flash from inside my room. The flash would blind them for a bit, and the smoke would keep them from seeing much else for a while. And the smell of it, well, the landlord wouldn't have much luck renting that room, or the ones next door, until he brought in a wizard to take care of it. A pistol banged below me. Fire went up from my shoulder blade near the top of my shoulder. The officer down there had even more luck than the musketeer to get me with a pistol in this light. I caught my balance and moved on, as old Holton had drummed into me. If you're not dead, keep moving. The tricks from the dance, ingrained into me as they were, kept me moving. I went around the side of the roof. There was a bang and a horrible whistling whine. Someone in a hurry down there had shot away his ramrod and is in serious trouble with his officers. I was in enough trouble of my own, and I didn't have time to worry about some French musketeer's difficulties. I wasn't sure how much blood I might be losing, and I couldn't do anything about it until I found a place where the musketeers wouldn't be going up and down every alley looking for me. The dance could help me for a long while, but I couldn't depend on it forever. Besides, if I were leaving a trail of blood, I'd be too easy to find. If I'd been, there was too much risk. I could destroy much more than myself that way. There was an emergency. There was an emergency place, though. Of course, this time, I was running along the roof, jumping to another, and again, running again. There was shouting, but not close. The officer, though lucky with his pistol, wasn't quick enough with his wits. He ought to have sent someone running along, following me and calling directions for the rest. While they loaded their muskets. I dropped to the ground and paused for a moment. I reached a hand back over my shoulder and brought it away red. I spoke a word, saw the blood on my fingers glow green for a moment, and felt a long strip of numbness along my back. That took care of the loss of blood, but it would be at the expense of my body. The longer I held that spell on, the faster I'd wear out, and the longer it would take me to come back from it. It was better than going along bleeding, but only just. And the longer I went, the worse it would become. It was a bit of a roundabout going to get to the emergency place, because there was a part of town where a man in a bloody shirt carrying a sword in the scabbard would be noticed and mentioned to the police or army or whoever was the first to come along. It was a long wooden warehouse, way-backed roof, several of the doors permanently nailed shut. It was warded, nothing fierce, just what would be expected of a disused warehouse. The real wards were underneath, an eerie sort of feeling that made one want not to stay in the neighborhood too long. I spoke my name, Jordan Wesson, followed by the word that allowed me to enter. I pressed on a pair of boards of one nailed-up door, and a section of the door opened up wide enough for me to enter. I muttered another word, which turned on the lights. They'd set the things up with a spell that didn't allow the lights to show through any cracks in the warehouse walls. One of those magical things that was beyond my training. The inside of the warehouse matched the outside. Dust, cobwebs, trash, broken barrels and boxes, the normal contents of a near-abandoned warehouse. Over by the wall, there was a metal-bound wooden chest with a curved lid. Plainly abandoned, for the hinges were broken and the lid sat askew. I approached it carefully, letting it get used to me. It was reading me, checking to make sure I was myself, coming under no compulsion to save personal necessity. How could it distinguish between my present necessity and a necessity involving someone holding a pistol on me or one of my loved ones? I don't know. Not that I have many loved ones anyway. Even though I approached slowly, I still stood with the toes of my boots 2 inches from it for a full minute before it abruptly began to shiver, then turned solid. The lid swung itself open, the latch becoming a hinge, then the contents were revealed. One of the more important items was a bandaging kit. I knew that the bullet was no longer in the wound, that it had ripped a deep gash on its way. Had it still been in the wound, I'd have had to deal with it differently. As it was, I just put a bandage on it. The bandaging kit was old stuff, clean cloth and a charm on it to prevent infection in the wound. Considering where my wound was, I'd have preferred newer stuff and that can center itself over a wound. But you can't have everything. At least I was able to remove the spell that was slowly weakening me. Then, having managed the contortions involved in bandaging my shoulder, I took the time to do a few sets of the dance, concentrating on those that fostered mental control. After that, I sought out fresh clothing. Unfortunately, whoever had stocked the chest had assumed it would be used by either giants or midgets, and that left me with trousers, coat, and shirt, all too big for me. Unfashionable, very noticeable, but better than bloody clothing and a scabbard sword in hand. There was a little pouch at the rear of the chest marked Birken Villain. It was a means of escape through chaos, but my understanding was that the route itself was so dangerous as to not be recommended. I'd wondered, on occasion, what sort of state to be to risk that. I pulled out a bundle of folded and a length of iridescent cloth. The sticks were arranged so that a cunning series of fixtures left one with 3 8-foot lengths and stronger than they looked. Tying these at one end, I set them up on a tripod, then wrapped the cloth around them, giving them something of an effect of one of the tents that the Mahodakwa of the new continent were said to live in. I crawled inside, curled myself in an uncomfortable lump, and slept. I had left my coat and other things back in the room. Given the effects of the vapor produced by the sphere, it would take a week of purifying before they'd be any use for scrying, location, or other spells. That was, if the process of purifying didn't destroy the very properties needed for such spells, too. However, I had left a trail of blood. Blood was the ideal material of any location, scrying or other spells. They'd be rousting out a wizard as soon as they could, but this iridescent cloth would shield me from any spells. Further, it would make a subtle change in my essence, so that spells based on my blood should still not be able to find me. This effect would wear out after a few days, less if I were very active, but it would give me a start. Despite the cramped quarters, I was able to sleep. When I woke, it was morning, or at least later in the morning. It was time to find out just where I stood. I walked through the streets of Raylan as though I didn't care that I was dressed in clothing apparently lent to me by my bigger brother. The fact that I carried a sword at my waist would also keep most people careful and polite. I was at present in an area that was a border between a bad part of town and the criminal quarter. People here tended not to mind other people's business, nor do they often tell much to the police or army. Just near the corner of the Corsairs Street and Baraba Avenue, there's a public pump. It had been put in long ago, when this was still a moderately well-to-do neighborhood. It had been set into a sort of alcove, faced with some kind of hard stone, but not marble. Carved with various scenes of past Frankish glories. There was a small fault in the stone, just beside the right front hoof of the horse of called Honor the Bright. Honor the Bright? I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I noticed that now this fault was defaced in part by a, graf- a graffito suggesting a Jankel was in the habit of performing feats of extreme flexibility. This vandalism did not have any effect on the sentinel, though. I made a certain hand gesture, and there was a quick flash of green, visible to my eyes only. Well, I suppose if there were a magician somewhere in the neighborhood who knew what to look for, he'd see it too. But that wasn't a chance worth worrying about. The flash of green meant everything was all right. It would have been mauve if there was a problem. Knowing what to look for, I could see signs and remnants of wards, some left for centuries. These, of course, were only warning kind were only warning kind of words. These, of course, were only the warning kind of words. The ones that knocked you out unconscious or dead when you trespassed would attract the ones that knocked you out or trespassed would attract the attention of the authorities, and soon they'd send some official wizard to dismantle the wards. The sentinel, of course, only let me know that Oskad was there, and let him know that someone was on their way to see him. The houses hereabouts had once been fine dwellings, but now they stood in their ranks, hunched and gray and crowded, soldiers worn out with war. I went up an unsafe looking set of wooden steps to the second floor and knocked on the door. There was a peephole in the door, but I knew that Oskad had a spelled mirror inside that would tell him who was out there, without him having to put his eye to the door. The door opened. He was about my size, a little heavier, hairline receding a little, wearing baggy trousers and a loose white shirt. His round face was expressionless. The silver? Not worth the sweat, which was the code for him to ask me if there was trouble, and for me to say, quite a lot. He stepped back. Better come in then. After he closed the door behind me, he asked, what happened? A company or so of French musketeers came up the stairs, and with another 5 or so out in the alley below my window. I went over the roofs and away to the warehouse, got a pistol pistol ball across the back as I was going. The thing is, they knew right where to come. Someone steered them right to me. He frowned. Any idea who? A couple of vague notions. He turned to the old roll top desk and began to open a drawer. First thing to do is to get you out of here. He turned, bringing up a pistol. I hadn't quite been expecting that, but it didn't surprise me either. I had my hand on my sword as he reached into the desk, and the sword came up as he spun around. I thrust him in the chest, and he went down, pistol flying off to clatter in a corner. Well, I'd learned something for sure. Someone had come back home and ordered me turned over. Fretting over who it had been wasn't worth the trouble. It was well known, for instance, that my gracious sovereign, the present king of Brigantia, was slowly going mad. In the interludes of distrusting even his closest servants, perhaps even particularly his closest servants. He had a reputation as a skilled assassin, too, just the kind of person who he might give an order about. Sorry, I had a. Wow, let me redo this. I had a reputation as a skilled assassin, too, just the kind of person he might give an order about one day. It may have happened to be one of those days when nobody caught on to what was happening until it was too late and the order had been sent. Oskad opened his eyes, looked up at me, and muttered, Jerry held back demons, then he's dead. Well, I had to get out of the city of Raylan, and out of Freyant as well. Though I had a slight urge to go back to Brigantia and stir things up. That wasn't a sensible option. I had a quick look around the suite, picked up a pistol, a bit more money, and one or two other useful things. I left the way I had come. There's a saying known by many names and in many fashions, which says, no situation so good it can't go bad. No situation so bad it can't get worse. I had made several acquaintances here and there, and I was just deciding who to go to first, which country to head for. The first intimation of anything was a sudden itching in my wound. Then there was a burning along the length of the bullet gouge, and I clenched my teeth to keep from screaming aloud. If I'd been weaker, the spell might have ended by killing me. As it was, I was able to put my mind into the state of purification, one of the aspects of the dance. That took all my strength. I barely felt myself hit the cobbles. After the night under the iridescent cloth, they shouldn't have been able to track me by my blood. But shouldn't have is a long way from definitely couldn't. I was luckier than I had any right to be. In this neighborhood, a well dressed man with a sword and a purse collapsing in the street was going to end up naked. Most likely, he wouldn't wake up at all because someone, perhaps out of anger towards anyone richer than them, was likely to stick a dagger into them. I wasn't completely lucky because someone had tried to brain me with a cudgel. Someone inexperienced, since they seemed to have taken the massive blood flow from a gashed head for a serious wound. It was late afternoon when I came around. I'd been dragged into an alley to give privacy to the robbers, which meant that any helpful souls who might report a robbed man wouldn't report me because they wouldn't be looking down alleys. After lying there aching for a bit, I could tell I'd been kicked and punched a few times, as well as everything else. I began to pull myself together and sit up. I was not thankful just then that the cudgel man hadn't stove my head in, being too involved with moving carefully whenever he moved set my head to throbbing. I sat for a minute, doing the mental exercises which would help me heal my hurts and help me function until they were healed. Of course, in the course of this, I discovered my main hurt was in my head, followed by my back, then various other bruises and scrapes. Someday, I'm going to invent a spell against bruises and make a fortune. Minor pains were minor pains, but my worst problem was my nakedness. Going walking naked and bloody in this part of Raylan was asking for someone to finish up the cudgel man's work. At my best, I'd meet up with the authorities and wind up being locked away for a madman. There were several solutions to this difficulty, but I never had the chance to attempt any of the more reasonable ones. I heard the sounds of childish voices at the mouth of the alley, speaking Frentish and with a harsh and colloquial Ralinaeus accent. I did so see them. A deader he was, with his head all mushed up. Bonkers, you've never seen nothing. Probably just a drunk. Bonkers yourself, cabbage rot. You look now, you'll see. They were turning in the alley now, 6 of them, ages 12 to 5, ragged, unwashed, semi-feral. There he is, told you. He ain't no deader. Almost, though. Hit him with a stone or two. It'll finish him. The speaker picked up a cobblestone and hurled it at me, missing by a hand's breadth. I pulled myself wobbly to my feet, armed with any every armed with anything, even a stick. I could have chased them off. As it was, I knew very well they'd finish me off or leave me in such shape that recovery was unlikely. Talking to them as birds, shocked at my shambling rate of movement. Drawing on the dance, I managed to straighten up a bit and move a little more smoothly. Allowing myself to be driven out onto the street would put me in a worse situation. All the alley doors were locked, of course, sometimes nailed shut, but I chose one that seemed the best of bad choices. It had been opened recently, so it wasn't nailed shut, and it seemed to be old and on the edge of decrepitude. In better physical conditions, I would have been able to judge better, but nobody outside of fantasy stories has a real working wish spell. I took a moment, ignoring the flying stones, including the one that smacked into my ribs, gathered my forces, and slammed a heel against the door, just beside the lock. The door wrenched again, slammed against something inside, tried to slam back again. I caught it with my shoulder before it could. Inside was a small wood stove, a table with a faded tablecloth, and not much else. I slammed the door to, then swung the table over on its side, pushing it against the door. I held it then, against an assault by small, furious bodies. But even weakened as I was, the table and I were still too much weight for them to shift. They stopped trying after a bit, but I continued to sit there. Sure enough, there was renewed battering at the door a few minutes later. They were fierce and dangerous, but they were children. They lost interest after a bit and went away. I didn't altogether depend on that. They might have only gone away to see if they could find another way in. I took the tablecloth, folded it, put it around my waist, then tucked it up underneath, in a passable imitation of a bohali loincloth. There was a closet, covered by a long curtain, but it contained only women's clothing, much too small for me. I took a strip of the curtain and made it into an adequate turban, adding to my resemblance to a bohal. I also broke off the length of a broomstick for a weapon. In this neighborhood, the body had occasionally thieves, child stealers, well poisoners, and black magicians. They did in fact have rather elastic notions of private property, even among themselves. And some of them had some magic spells, which, well, old Holton told me I have a tendency to pedantry. So my disguise, such as it was, required a good deal of alertness from me while walking on the streets. I'd have liked to have done a set of the dance, but there was neither the room nor time, and a bohal doing some sort of strange dance in public would attract a lynch mob. I was careful to avoid thinking about my good fortune that the children weren't around, remembering how I'd just been thinking to myself how well off when things went to hell in hot pitch. No situation so bad. Shut up, Jerry. I hadn't considered the Bohali as a possible refuge before, but I was considering it now. I wasn't sure how my acquaintances would take to having a Bahal come to their door. Though it was not impossible to steal clothing, every little risk was a possibility of disaster. On the other hand, It was a long walk to the Bahali grounds outside the city, and I was still not in the best of conditions. I was going to need every bit of strength, skill, and alertness I could muster, especially in my present state, just to get there alive. I took the route that went by the market. Most in this sort of disguise, I'd have avoided it, with its chances for disaster to strike. But I had a reason this time. I took advantage of the momentary lapse of attention on the part of a baker and palmed a small loaf. In better condition, a momentary lapse. I'd have caused his momentary lapse of attention. But then, in better condition, I wouldn't have had the need to. After I got out of sight of the baker, I ate the loaf, openly, of course. Trying to be unobtrusive about it would have simply attracted more attention. After that, I began to feel better about myself. The idea of Bahali became better and better. I headed that way. I tried to get there, avoiding as much as possible the areas where the Bahali, particularly a Bohal alone, would be in serious danger. With my bit of broomstick, I was more dangerous than one would think. But as old Holton used to say, any fight you can avoid is one you've won. I was worn down when I came to the Bahali grounds, an area full of painted wagons and tents, children running loose and getting into mischief, and adults looking me over carefully. The adults were dressed in everything from the sort of outfit I was wearing to loose shirt and trousers bloused over black boots, to what seemed like ordinary Frenchish clothing, as well as various combinations. I got reserves strength left to me. Balakcha Abba. I knew my accent was next to perfect, and my skin was dark enough for me to pass for a light-skinned Bohal, sorry. One of the older men, wearing a loose shirt and trousers, but topped by a real turban, approached me and said, "Who pursues you?" I noticed that he did not call me brother, which might not be significant. Frentish outsiders. He smiled slightly. Given where we are, who else? But who among the Frentish outsiders? It didn't seem like a good idea to lie. Police and army. He frowned. You know what it means if the police or the army become displeased with us? Worse still, both. Give me a crust of bread and a place to sleep, and tomorrow I will make my own way. It wasn't going as well as I had hoped. His frown deepened. We'll give you better than that at the least. But beyond that, I believe the little mother will have to. We were now getting to the edge of my knowledge of Bahali customs. I'm willing to abide by that. I hadn't thought his frown could get any deeper. Clearly, my response was not quite the correct one. So come sit down here a moment. He called to someone else. Food for this brother. Which was then a favorable sign that he called me brother. Further, that they were feeding me. The hospitality custom, so widespread through many cultures, meant that if you gave food to a stranger, he became a guest under your protection. I couldn't help wondering if there might be a codicil in there regarding strangers who came, falsely claiming to be one of you. They brought me some broth and bread, though, and sat me down on a brightly painted chest to be able to rest while I ate. The food and drink restored me a bit, but nowhere near enough. I was still pushing away the fatigue when the older man, there still hadn't been any names exchanged, came and said, "The little mother will see you now." I knew that the Bahali were closely ruled by matriarchs, known as Little Mother, each having certain magical and mystical powers. It was said that whenever two or more groups joined, the eldest of the matriarchs took on the ruling role. The eldest of the matriarchs took on ruling a role, though the others were still respected and consulted. I wonder just how much politicking and backstabbing that so gentle description hid. Or maybe it was beyond cynical spy assassination. Sorry. Or maybe it was beyond a cynical spy assassin to believe such forbearing behavior. Blah, 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 blah. I was led to a darkened wagon, which I entered. A lamp flared into life, and I was facing a short, dumpy little woman, wearing a like a kindly little mother, more like an old great grandmother who has seen much of life and has been disappointed by all of it. You seek asylum from the police and the army. You understand what happens if your presence among us is revealed? Yes. Her eyebrows raised. Only yes? I understand. Not, yes, I understand that your people will be slaughtered in Raylan, possibly Ray. Little mother, it will be for you to accept or reject asylum. Oh, for certain. But the matter isn't so simple, you see. For in, oh, for certain. But the matter isn't so simple, you see. For instance, though you come dressed as one of us, you are not. But you should be but should you be rejected for that? I have a feeling, perhaps not so strong as a seeing, but a feeling that helping you will be to our later benefit. And on the other hand, keeping you where you may be found is foolish in the extreme. Can you handle horses? Most horses, yes. A real Bohai would have declared his ability to handle any horse ever foaled. On the other hand, that wasn't a question that the little mother would have asked of a real Bohal. I'm just reading that. Sorry, guys. She nodded. Good. We have been asked by one who has done us a favor now and then to provide horses and handlers for a certain lady to travel to Aprush. You wouldn't be averse to going to Aprush, would you? So long as it's out of France, I'm happy. Good. You will leave early in the morning. Choctaw will introduce you to your fellows when you go from there. A good night to you. I wasn't given any time to ask any questions, such as why a lady would be hiring people among the Bohal rather than travel with her own grooms, servants, and the like. The elder, who I assumed to be Choctaw, took charge of me. She said, I began. Yes, I know. Come along. It seemed clear that the decision about me had been made before I saw little mother. I followed, wondering what would have happened if I'd refused this offer, or had I been carefully nudged into accepting it without me feeling the nudge. Why does this lady want? He turned on me, holding up a finger. Wait a minute. Why does this lady want? He turned on me, holding up a finger. First thing is, you don't ask questions. What you don't know, you can't give away to anyone. Understand? Which sounded reasonable, but still I was curious. I'd have to see what I could find out without looking like I was trying to find out. I was introduced to Stubba, a short, fat, dour seeming fellow, along with Tortola, A tall, smiling, a tall, smiling, with a shock of black hair. Mm, nope. Oh my goodness, I'm butchering this sentence. I'm sorry, guys. Hold on, let me try that again. Along with Tortola, it's going to add us. Who was tall, smiling, with a shock of jet black hair. And Gallus, tall and slender, with dark brown hair and a scar on one side of his cheek. Though they didn't say or do anything threatening, I was sure they were both nope. Sentence problem. Sorry, guys. I'm counting 3 people here unless I've misread somewhere. Anyway, I was sure they were all dangerous men. Jerry, we best find you something a bit more appropriate, Ted said. This got to be an outfit of the sort I had on, but one that didn't shout out its origins in a tablecloth and curtain. I was also supplied with a pair of boots, made for Jotlin, but he died before he could even pay for them, Choctaw said. I think you should have this. He took out a sheathed knife. Tuck it into your boot and don't use it until you have to. If I read you right, you'll know when that is. They also found a blanket for me to wrap myself in for the night, for which I was grateful. When Stubba shook me awake, it seemed I'd slept for about 2 minutes, but stars told me it had been a fair time. My battered and worn body was going to need some building up. Up, brother. The day's well on. I was sure it meant to be a joke, but his expression remained dour. I got up, put on my boots, and folded my blanket. He led me to a rope of various sorts, none of them which might be called eye-catching, but no broken down nags either. It seemed someone wanted to travel unobtrusively. Get the tack on and lead ropes to the remainder. These 3 saddles separate from the rest. They go on the big dun and the 2 roans, but they belong to the 3 of us, so we'll take care of them. Your horse is that gray over there. You use this saddle, the one with the moon symbols on it. Watch the gray. He has a habit of every once in a while checking out a new rider to see if he's awake. I understand this as we've given you a wild one to see if you really know anything, if you really do know anything about horses. I went to work. Besides the already mentioned saddles, there were 3 others, 2 women's and 1 man's. Enough data to speculate on. Any Bahali would saddle his own, which meant we were taking 2 Frenchish women and a man somewhere. Likely a woman of quality, with a servant and escort. If everything were above board, such a group would be traveling by carriage with an entourage. So someone was slipping off. An elopement? Well, possibly, but that was getting beyond what the data said. The gray didn't seem to object too badly to saddles and bridles, other than that bit of sidestepping, which just made me the more cautious. I'm not sure if she managed to time it by some arcane means, but when I was done, the little mother was standing there, smiling in the light of the torches. Yes, you do know about horses. I need a word with you before you go. I walked over to her. I won't ask any questions, and I prefer you didn't either. I don't know how serious the people are who are after you, but this enterprise is more important than just aiding the escape of one spy. My head came up at that. She was still smiling. Run through the possibilities as I have done. Don't bother denying or admitting. But if the people come after you, decide to scry for you, or merely cast a spell, you could be in danger and danger to the rest of the party. So here, give me a small stoppered vial from a pocket somewhere in her skirt. Put a drop of it in a cup of water or wine and drink it once per day. Morning is best. And don't put it in beer or ale. It will hide you from spells of various sorts. Those based on contagion, assuming someone back there has something of yours to track you by. I nodded. Thank you. Huh. I do have to prevent anything from interfering with his journey, and I'll be giving the same to the other three. There's one effect of it you should be aware of. It causes you to bleed more readily. Be careful of a serious cut, and you might be more comfortable not shaving while you're taking it. Now I have one other thing to ask of you. Yes? If it should ever occur that one of the Brotherhood, man or woman, old or young, needs assistance, will you give it? Favor for favor? Yes, I agree. She smiled a little. I like that. Simple agreement. No allowance for circumstances, no codicils of any sort. Would I dare? What? Oh, the dreaded curse of the legend? About Holly curses the legend? No, all you have to fear of is the troubling of your own conscience. There was the sound of a vehicle approaching. Then a woman and a worn and weary old horse hauling a worn and weary cabriolet came into the torchlight. For all the many Bahali I knew to be around, none were in sight, aside from Stuba. Sorry. Aside from Stuba, Tortola, Gallus, and the little mother. I had a feeling that everyone else knew what was happening, were taking care to ignore it. The man driving the cabriolet was tall and well built, and did not seem at all to be the sort romancing young girls into elopement. The woman with them, for that matter, didn't look the sort for romantic elopements. More like a kind woman who can't make up her own mind about things. She was blonde as well, which would make her harder to disguise as Bohal. There was a third woman as well, clearly the servant for the first. A really nice, dark-haired, and easier to dress as Bohal. For her to carry off the disguise, though, would be another matter. I went to hold the cab horse as they got down, being careful not to seem too interested in them. The two women went into one wagon, the man in another. The man was out first, dressed in loose trousers and a shirt, with an open vest over top, and wearing a round brimless cloth hat. He was working a little too hard at not feeling self-conscious, and nobody looking at him closely would take him for anything other than someone dressed as Bahal. I hoped Stuba would give him a few pointers in the art. Taking it on to myself to do so would not be welcomed, and might even lead to trouble. The women came out, almost together. The maid was fairly well disguised, though perhaps a bit uneasy. The woman, with her hair hidden under the kerchief, was Bahal, and Steve's questions about her complexion were just that, stupid. Best disguise, old Holton had said. It's one you don't put on with paint and fancy clothing. It's the one where you just are who you profess to be. right actions, right words. Nobody will see much else. They were introduced to us all, and to give them their due, the maid was the only one who seemed a bit uneasy at being on a first name basis with a bunch of Bahali. Of course, we were introduced to them by the Bahali names they'd chosen, and nobody, at least not I, wanted to know anything other. The man was Bralham, the woman Callas, and the maid Dorax. The names seemed to be normal French names, without any family names attached. But it wasn't for me to say anything. Besides, there were Bahali there were Bahali who would take names in whatever country they'd been in before. The man climbed back into the cabriolet. I'll leave this a little further down the road. Kalis merely nodded. No romantic attachment there, then. The rest of us got on our horses with our meager packs and prepared to move off. Little Mother said at last farewell. Sun and fair days on your journey. We headed out of the torchlight onto the dusty road, dawn beginning to lighten around us. Okay, so that was the first chapter. Went a different way than I thought, so I'm not sure. We'll see how it continues on. Um, yeah, I mean, at least I'm intrigued. I am hoping that whatever happened before, we find out more about, because I need to know. And if not, I will figure it out on my own and write it in after the fact. But let's hope that it actually has like it's all built in there already, because that would be really cool. And I'd like that a lot. Anyway, yeah. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm back again, and I'll be doing this every night for the month of June. Then once June's up, then I'm probably gonna be taking a break while I do the edits on here if I'm able to, or we'll see. I think it might just be, yeah, it'll either I'll be doing edits on this in June and taking a break, or I might read some other stuff. And in saying that, I also have a bunch of say it back in the swing of things a little bit, but actually I'll say it now. Just a little heads up. So for 40 Silver Ponies, remember how that kind of cut off part way? Well, I am going to, over the next little while, I'm going to uh, create the rest of the campaign for it, because the story was based on more D&D. So I'm going to create a campaign based on it. Not really sure. It's going to be very open-ended as to what's going to happen in it. And I'm going to play out on live stream as a solo D&D campaign what happens in the rest of the story. And then I'm going to write it as a story for the final part of the book. So, and it'll be set in that campaign setting, in that world. So, but that's going to be later on in the fall. So, just something for you guys to think about. It'll be happening on the weekends, on Saturdays, when I'm like every second Saturday. But I'll let you guys know more about it as the time gets closer. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in, and I will talk to you all tomorrow night when I bring you the next chapter of the story. So, good night, everybody.